All right. Next question comes to us from Shu Shi Wu, and this abbreviation, I believe, is in your opinion, IYO. In your opinion, why are there more digital natives interested in analog artifacts like fountain pens? So this is what we alluded to earlier. So this is a bit of a brainer, Brian, the opposite of a no-brainer.
This is a brainer, and I put some brain behind it, into it.
There are some words you have typed in here, yes.
I did type some words. Not quite a deep dive, but it could get there. So I don't know necessarily what the more is that's being compared to here. Are there more digital natives interested? More than what? Like more than before digital natives existed?
Maybe what they mean is an increasing number of
digital natives. But I mean,
like more and more.
But digital natives is like a newer thing. So I don't know.
Well, maybe they're saying, why are newer people interested in them?
Okay. I think I get the principle. Why are people that are growing up with digital things getting into analog things, I think is the nature of the question. Okay, good. That's how I interpreted it.
Yeah.
So I think it just strikes to something that's very fundamental in human nature, which is that people are tactile. There's a reason why we have fingerprints and why our fingertips have a higher concentration of nerves than other parts of our body, not exclusively. We're not going to get down to that rabbit hole, but basically the reason why you don't feel as much on your upper arms as you can with your fingertips is because we use our fingertips for touching and sensing and doing a lot of work. And so we're made to work with our hands to a certain degree. So I think if you're dealing with virtual things all the time, you have like biological parts of you that are being underutilized based on how we've been doing things for a very, 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 very long time in human history. So I think there's just like a biology behind using our hands for things that we find just very gratifying and very rewarding. So I know I personally am that way. And especially as we've been more virtual with this COVID life and kind of remote hybrid, whatever scenario we find ourselves in, I'm like in Zoom meetings and stuff like that, shooting videos like this all the time. I'm like, when my workday wraps up, I'm like, I want to go in the woods and get my hands dirty and cut some logs and wreck my body and just, because I've just been sitting on a chair or a sofa all day looking at a screen, and I'm like, I gotta make up for all that. So I personally have felt that a little bit as this digital native kind of quasi world that Drew and I find ourselves in as millennials here. I think aside from really just the basic nature of that physical touch kind of thing that we find appealing, I think there's some very fountain pen specific things that I think are also pretty cool that draw us to it. I think it has to do with maybe some of the learning curve associated with fountain pens. Makes it so that it's not something that everybody gets into. You got to kind of be drawn to it, have enough of a desire to do it and all that, which creates a little bit of a barrier to entry to the whole community. And I think that in the just completely just overabundance of interconnectedness and bombardment of marketing and stuff that we're all being pummeled with every day, it's kind of nice to have some sort of natural barrier to entry into some of our hobbies, because it keeps the more casual and overly opinionated folks out. Not completely, but maybe more so than your more casual topics. So all that to say, if you're into fountain pens, there's probably a good reason, and you kind of really want to be there. So it creates, an environment where people care a lot more. They're very invested, and it's very rewarding to be there. And there's a good sense of community. So I think that that's not specifically inherent to a tactile, thing. And there's probably a lot of other places outside the fountain pen world where that is also happening. But I think that just given the nature of the fountain pens, how they're a little more complex and there's a bit of a learning curve, probably naturally creates a little more rewarding community around that can then, be beneficial just outside of that tactile feel. Some other things, I think there is just some interesting technology within fountain pens, not only current technology, but historical technology, if that makes sense. So there are patents going back 150 years basically that deal with fountain pen, feed systems and filling mechanisms and materials and all that. So, if you're really into current technology, it can be really fun and interesting to then go back and look at retro technology, as Drew has talked about his collecting VHS tapes and his interest in a Talkboy and all this type of stuff. Like, there's something cool, even though it's old, it was new technology. It's like historical newness, if you want to call it that. Like, there's a lot of that in the fountain pen world too, which I think is really kind of neat and interesting to explore. So you end up blending this very interesting space between history and culture and technology. I don't know. It's just pretty fascinating. And I see this happening in other places outside of fountain pens too. We are obviously active on YouTube because we post a lot of videos. Well, MKBHD is one of the, top like cinematic kind of YouTubers, reviews a lot of technology products. Well, he's got like a whole series of videos he's done that are all retro technology. So he's going back and doing old computers and, the original Nintendo and like all that kind of stuff, but doing like new, current, super up-to-date like reviews of this really old technology. And it's just really fascinating to blend the history with the technology. You get some of that excitement, but you also know how it pans out, of going back, reviewing like the original iPhone and like all this kind of stuff. Very, very fascinating. So I think fountain pens can kind of fall into that territory because they were the communication tool of their day. And then I think, like, especially if you're into chemistry and physics and science, there's so much of that in the fountain pen technology, ink, paper, just the relationship with all those, the manufacturing side of things. There's a lot of that gets into it too, and you can really nerd out about that, to the degree where we literally get scientists who order hundreds of ink samples at a time because they want to do chromatography tests and all this kind of stuff. And it's like, oh, that's a whole other level of interest of things to get into with fountain pen stuff. And then another really cool aspect of it is that these are actual tools that you're using. So it's like, okay, yeah, if you're into, movies, like collecting movies, that's cool. You watch them, they sit on a shelf, you have a collection, but you're not like using the VHS tape to like manufacture something, right. You're like absorbing what it is and appreciating it for the art, but you're not actually necessarily creating anything with it. Well, fountain pens, you are, whatever you're doing, pretty much, you're creating things. You're either writing words, doing drawings, doing, some of that. You're expressing yourself of some kind, so it's almost more like an instrument in that respect. So I think that there's some really cool stuff that you can do that just gets to another level beyond just like, I have this object, I bought it, I'm into it. You're actually creating, expressing yourself. You're learning more about yourself as you're expressing your words. You get into lots of different layers with all that kind of stuff. So again, I'm obviously like so bought and sold on the concept of fountain pens. I could go on about this all day and I won't, but I think it's just really cool. There's so many different things that can be appealing, all of them with like layers and depth and intricacies that you can get and nuances that you can get more and more into, that I think that's got enough of a universal appeal to them that anyone can be interested in fountain pens. Not everyone will be, but there's kind of like something for everybody there. If you're kind of willing to go through it and you have that kind of inclination towards your personality, I think you're going to find something really fascinating to latch onto and then find rewarding and then find other people that are also into it. And it's just a really, really kind of a cool feedback loop you get into that I think you can appreciate given the, I don't know, you go in most other places online and people just have like very quick opinions. They don't really know what they're talking about and they're just free to shoot you down just because whatever, they're having a bad day. There's some of that in the fountain pen world, but honestly, not very much. Most of it is kind of the opposite of that. People are like, yeah, I don't really care about all that other stuff, but like, let's nerd out about the thing that we're really into. And I don't really care if you like are from a different place or you have different perspectives, that's fine. Okay, whatever. But like, we all love pens. And that's just really, really very cool. And I think there's not a lot of that happening for digital natives. So when you find something like that, you're like, wow, this is special. I really like that I can be myself and be into the same stuff that other people who are different than me are also into it. Kind of a nice little side note to the fountain pen hobby that doesn't have anything to do actually with the pen specifically, but I don't know, that's been my experience and something I found rewarding. Whew, so there you go. I don't know if that was a deep dive, but it was close. It was a midway dive.
That was beautifully said, Brian. I could add to that, but it would really just be repeating what you said in different ways. That really hit the nail on the head. I liked a lot of what you just said, and especially the bit about the community aspect, about how they're similar to instruments, meaning you can actually do stuff with them, you can collect them and use them. I love that.
Absolutely.
But let's just again appreciate the members of the community. It is something special. Sure. You could go and look at the YouTube comment section about the new Spider-Man trailer and see some of the most horrible, hateful things in the world. But you're going to go in the comment section of this video and see some of the classiest, nicest, kindest people in all of YouTubedom. And we are so incredibly fortunate and grateful to be a part of the community with you. And thank you for joining us every week.
Absolutely. And Drew and I can be a testament to that. Like, we both have been doing this for over a decade, like full time, immersed in this whole situation. And we are still finding new and exciting things to get into. We're still finding complete large pockets of this community, this world, whatever, that we know nothing about. And it's like, oh my gosh, there's so much there. Like, I haven't even scratched the surface on that yet. Give me another couple of decades and maybe I can hold my own in that conversation. There's just so much to get into. It's literally just like a lifetime of rewarding kind of stuff you can get into if you find that you really like this stuff. So it's pretty neat.
We like that you like it. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right.